Hello, everybody, and welcome to Save the Great South Bay's Bay Friendly Yard monthly webinar series. My name is Robin Silvestri, and I'm the Executive Director of Save the Great South Bay. Today, we're going to be talking about Bay Friendly Yards, nature, and mindfulness, how you can bring some peace and joy and serenity into your life in your own backyard. Today's program is presented in collaboration with the Sayville Library, Cold Spring Harbor Library and Environmental Center, the Patchogue Medford Library, the Babylon Public Library, and the Lindenhurst Memorial Library, which is certified as a Bay-friendly yard. So go Bulldog Lindy Bulldogs. Next slide, please, Kristen. A little bit about our organization. We were started back in 2013 when two Sayville High School alumni returned to Long Island after having been away for a while, and were completely dismayed at the state of the Great South Bay. It had been assaulted by brown tides starting in 1986, and these tides became a recurring theme every spring and summer in the Great South Bay. And what the brown tides are they're algal blooms caused by excessive nitrogen that comes off of the mainland into the bay, and they cause specific plankton in the bay to bloom, causing the algal blooms. And algal blooms cover the bay, disallowing oxygen and light, or disallowing light, which affects the natural processes in the bay. And so with that, our organization was founded. They decided they were going to do something then and there about it. They started Save the Great South Bay to actively promote programs and policies that protect and preserve the bay. Next slide, please. So our organization focuses on three main areas. We have our Creek Defender program, which is where we work together with municipalities, local organizations, schools, elected officials, and many others as we patrol and identify areas in need of cleanups along the 50 creeks that lead into the Great South Bay across the mainland. From Massapequa to Mastic Beach, there are some 50 creeks that are the arteries and the lifeline to the bay. Additionally, we are launching our Great South Bay Oyster Project, whereby we'll be bringing back oysters to the bay in the form of a sanctuary for the first time in nearly 100 years. So we're super excited about the Great South Bay Oyster Project. And part of why we're here today is our third leg, which is habitat restoration, whereby we promote native habitat restoration through planting of native species, stormwater management, and the utilization of eco-friendly maintenance techniques, such as, very simply, not using fertilizer on your lawn or leaving the clippings when you mow, with the end goal of improving the quality of the water that enters the bay. So those are the three main programs that we have. Next slide, please. Within our habitat restoration program, which is led by our habitat director, Frank Piccinini, we have the Bay Friendly Yards program. And this program is a place where we encourage people to start where they stand. Really, you can have an impact on the health of the bay in your own backyard by having a Bay Friendly Yard where you have native plants available, you help manage stormwater, and you become a local steward of the land directly beneath your feet. You can help save the Great South Bay. With this, we have a certification program. So if you are doing all these things already, you can get certified and become part of our growing network of Bay-friendly yards. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Kristen Perret. She is going to be talking with us about nature and mindfulness and how Bay-friendly yards can be good, how we tie together the outside nature part of Bay-friendly yards to our insides. How the webinar works is Dr. Perret will give about a 20-minute presentation. We ask you to hold all of your questions to the end. You can put any questions that you have in the Q&A section. We'll be happy to answer them all after her presentation is complete. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And I'm going to turn the floor over. Well, Kristen, if you give me the next slide, I'd love to introduce you.
Sure.
So Kristen is a clinical psychologist and co-founder of Simple Consulting, a pro-social facilitator, a loving mom to Russell, our favorite 3-year-old on Long Island, and she's a native Long Islander. She's given numerous lectures to professional and lay audiences and has provided training to medical students at the MMC. She has also been featured, she has featured articles and interviews for media and public relations such as care.com, Voice of America, and the Carolina Parent Magazine. Dr. Perret utilizes her experience in mindfulness and pro-social within her private practice, community and private programming, and as a mother of a budding naturalist. So with that, welcome, Kristen, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking your time on this beautiful Saturday morning to share your knowledge and experience with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for Save the Great South by offering such amazing programming to the public. And I hope that I can sort of honor that mission today by sharing with everyone a little bit about my favorite thing, which is mindfulness. So today's talk, Nature and Mindfulness, what I'm really hoping that we can do is discuss a little bit about how to take better care of ourselves and hopefully to leave this lecture feeling like we have a tool that we understand, that we can use, and that we can feel really excited about. Sorry, my slide's delayed. There we go. So there are a few points I'm going to go through today, hopefully not bore anyone. I know I can get a little bit into the nitty gritty, especially about mindfulness. But today's lecture is really just about understanding our bodies, understanding our stressors, and understanding what we can do about that. We all have had a very, very eventful year, and that can be really challenging, and it can tax not only our emotions, but also our bodies. And one of the things that can really help that is right outside our windows. It's right in our own backyards. And so I'm hoping today that we all leave feeling a little bit better equipped for how to take care of our overall health. So I wanted to start by speaking a little bit about our relationship with nature. For each of us, we have a connection with nature already. I'm sure of it, no matter whether you garden or you live in the city or you live in a small plot or a large plot, it really doesn't matter. Inherent in our bodies is a connection with nature because our bodies developed within nature. We're not a visitor in the woods. We are actually a part of nature. We're woven in like a knit blanket. So one of the things that I wanted to bring our attention to just for a brief moment is our own breath. So if all of you would indulge me in taking one nice, long, deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. As we take a long exhalation, we're actually triggering a center in our brain that re-regulates stressors. Interesting because I'm sure all of you have done it, whether it's in the form of a sigh or actually coaching yourself to take a deep breath when you're stressed. We recently found out this morning, my husband and I, who happens to be Frank Piccinini, we found out this morning that a neighbor of ours was going to be spraying their lawn for ticks and fleas and mosquitoes. And when we got notice, Frank was not in his best state, as you might imagine, thinking about our little organic garden in the background and our butterfly milkweed and all the ways that these chemicals and these neurotoxins would be affecting something that we really try hard to cultivate, not just for ourselves, but for future generations, like my little Russell. And when Frank was talking this morning, his breath started to get shallow. And I could hear it in his voice, and his voice got stronger and his voice got firm. And that's because that's what our stress system does. His body was reacting to a potential threat. And because of that, all of the systems in his body were getting activated. And that sympathetic nervous system really does charge us up for fight or flight. And nature and mindfulness can really be a key in sort of seesawing that system back into balance by activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So what can nature actually do for our bodies? A tremendous amount. Just being physically in a natural environment can enhance so many areas of our body and really promote so many healthy systems in our body, like that parasympathetic nervous system, the sort of chill out, rest and digest system of the brain, but it can also have really lasting effects that we notice in ourselves. Feelings of enhanced fulfillment, lower levels of anxiety, a greater level of happiness. I can't tell you the number of people who say to me, especially living on Long Island, "Oh, a day at the beach is my favorite thing to do." And of course it is. There are so many aspects at the beach that fill your senses, that fill your brain, that central computer that helps the rest of our body function well, with information that has a harmonious effect on us. So when you have said to yourself, "Oh, I just need a breath of fresh air," you're right. Your body really does need a breath of fresh air. When you've said to yourself, "I need to relax, get away, I'm taking a beach day," you're right. Your body really does need that. And there are ways to not let it escalate to a point where we really need it, and to catch ourselves sooner in smaller ways, to be able to introduce ourselves back into nature, to regain some of those really healing effects it has on us, including improving pro-social behaviors, pro-nature behaviors, and regulating our nervous systems. I thought that this was such a beautiful representation of some of the ways that nature really helps us manage things in our body and helps us boost things that I think all of us could agree are important, like the ability to concentrate or reducing stress. And let me just give an example. Going back to Frank this morning, what I had said to Frank was, let's calm down for a second, right? Let's sort of chill out and let's think about what we're talking about and what we're going to say to the neighbors. We really wanted to take care of it this morning before the spraying started. And one of the things I did was begin to slow down my own breathing and slow down my own speech and slow down my own way of communicating in order to help Frank slow down too. And as he was leaving the house, I really took a deep breath, and I had my son take a deep breath. He was getting pretty upset. He really loves the butterflies in our yard, and he had overheard Frank and I talking about how those chemicals would have hurt those butterflies. And when Frank came back in, his whole person was different, relaxed, more contented, slower in pace. His body was calm. And we've all experienced that. I'm talking about Frank and calling him out this morning because I'm allowed to, I'm his wife. But we've all experienced that. I've experienced that as well, where something has occurred in my world, whether it's a stressful work day or a difficult conversation with a family member or a friend, and the systems in my body have ramped up. And sometimes at the end of the week, we might say to ourselves, like, oh, like my back is really bothering me, or my neck is really strained this week. And you're right, over the course of those stressful interactions with our surrounding world, our body gets activated and holds on to that. So our breathing and our heart rate and our immune system all get impacted. And that's really sort of, to say the least or the fewest of those systems. So spending time in nature with all of these amazing impacts in health and wellness, well, isn't that a win-win? So that means if I go outside to my own backyard and I spend some time among my plants, among my trees, or I walk the neighborhood or walk the street, I look at that greenery, I look at the animals, that I can have these benefits. Absolutely. But let's take it a step further. How do I fully get in on the action of all those benefits? Mindfulness. So research indicates at 100% just being in nature facilitates all these different benefits to our bodies and our systems. Kudos to nature. Thanks, Mother Nature. But there's a moderating factor here. What actually ends up flipping the switch between getting some gains from nature and getting maximal gains from nature is something called mindfulness. And I'll ask all of you to do something with me for a moment. I'd ask you to breathe in again through your nose, just like we did at the beginning, and with a long exhalation out the mouth. Now let's do it again, but this time I'm going to ask you something a little bit more specific. I'm going to ask you to breathe in through your nose and notice the temperature of the air. Let's see if we could do that. Let's see. So the air in my house feels cool to me. So as I breathe in my nose, I could notice that cool air. And now let's take it one step further. As we breathe out, I'm going to see if I can notice the temperature of the air coming out of my mouth. In through my nose, out my mouth. And now what I'm noticing is there's a change there. Something has changed in the process of me breathing. The air coming in from the environment cool, out of my mouth warmed. Why is that significant? Well, for a few reasons. You just practiced mindfulness. Did it feel simple? Probably. Can it be really simple? Absolutely. So mindfulness is side effect free. It only has neurological, emotional, psychological, and physiological benefits. We don't have to worry about any of those nasty side effects that we hear at the end of prescription commercials. You might or experience none of that. What you're going to experience is a sense of oneness, a sense of calm, a sense of relaxation, and a sense of centeredness, in addition to boosting all those systems in your body that help protect you and boost your overall health. Amazing. Where can I do it? Is it conveniently located? Absolutely. All we need to do in order to be able to practice mindfulness is to be awake and have a body. Congratulations, you can do it. And there's no cost. No subscription, no apps, no monthly fees, there's zero copay. And what I will tell you is there are a lot of good services out there. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard about them. Headspace, Calm app, 10% Happier. All of those are lovely guided programs for mindfulness. But if you don't have an interest or the time or the money to invest in that, we really don't need to. All we need is ourselves. And in this specific talk, a little bit of nature. So I'm going to ask all of you to participate with me in a longer guided meditation for a moment, just so that we could gather a little bit more information in our bodies about the experience of mindfulness and perhaps even experience some of the benefits during this talk. So if we were all together in person, which one day I hope we will be, we would go outside. I would take everyone outside and we'd sit on the grass and we would have an experience actually within nature. For this specific exercise, I'm going to bring you mentally into nature, which is our second best. So if everyone's comfortable, if you wouldn't mind indulging me and closing your eyes for a moment, that would be great. I'm not going to make any funny faces at you while you close your eyes. So as you close your eyes or gaze down at the floor so that you can see just your feet and just that heaviness of your eyelids over, that would be really great. And then we're going to start by bringing our attention into the room that we're in, whether it's like me up in my bedroom, or whether you're in your living room or outside on your deck, just bringing your attention into the space you're in. And once you've done that, I'll ask you to bring your attention one step further inward into your body. Noticing perhaps the positioning of your body, any tension, any places that maybe you want to stretch or move to get more comfortable. And then I'll ask you to bring your attention a little bit further inward into the breath itself. That breath, that ever-present part of your existence. Most of the time, we don't even have to think about it. But today is about thinking about things. It's about being aware of our participation. So I'm going to ask you to indulge me again in those long inhalations and long exhalations, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And with each inhalation and exhalation, noticing the rise and then fall of our chest. Inhaling in, exhaling out. Inhaling in, exhaling out. Not needing to change our breath in any way, not needing to change anything about the situation in any way, just noticing the breath. And now, if you will, journey with me into your mental woods. As we begin our walk together, we see a forest ahead of us. And together we enter. First noticing the understory, the ferns, the moss, the rocks. Maybe we even see a few small animals scurry away, chipmunks or squirrels. And as we continue our walk into the woods, we notice a sound in the distance. It's certainly a trickling of water. And as we walk further into the forest, we see a creek. How wonderful to experience the moving water. And we sit down alongside each other at the edge of the creek, and we begin to watch its current. As the water moves past small plants and rocks, sometimes dipping down, sometimes going over. We begin to feel a calmness in our body, a oneness with the area around us. We can hear the trees and leaves rustling, songbirds in the distance. And as we sit there together, watching this current, we realize everything is as it should be. We needn't judge it. We needn't change it. We're just being present to what is. And if your mind is straying, because it will, just gently bring your attention back to that place in the woods, that little sanctuary that Mother Nature has made for us, sitting next to each other at the edge of that creek. Inhaling, exhaling. Just as the plants breathe, we breathe. Just as the water flows, we drink. We and nature exist with each other, not in spite of each other. And we begin to feel our bodies relax. The tension in our faces melting away. Inhaling, exhaling. The tension in our shoulders and neck, our shoulders dropping away from our ears. Sitting next to each other alongside that body of water. Inhaling, exhaling. And now I'll ask you, just for a moment, to bring your attention back into your breathing. Noticing again the rising and falling of your own chest. Your body's response to what it does so well, keep you alive. The inhalation, the exhalation. And now I'll ask you to bring your attention back into the room, slowly opening your eyes and coming back to our lecture together. If you've never practiced mindfulness before, this was a brief introduction. It was a way to allow our bodies to experience what is an ancient Buddhist practice, but what today research is showing has so many applications that help us in everyday life. Mindfulness is applied now in schools, in prisons, in medical settings before surgeries. It's applied for so many different areas of health, both mental and physical, including blood pressure. If you might notice after that meditation, maybe your heart rate slowed, maybe your breathing has slowed, maybe you were able to let go of some of that thinking that you had carried into the lecture from before participating. But now, here we are together, mindful in our diagram here, so many things swirling around, the to-do list of the day, the to-do list of the afternoon, the to-do list while eating breakfast. I have to send out that email. Oh, don't let me forget this. Oh, the laundry. Oh my gosh, I left it in the washer overnight. Versus that person on the right who's truly observing and experiencing what is in the moment in front of them, those four little trees and the sun. So during our mindfulness exercise, I tried to highlight for all of us the different components of mindfulness, what truly makes up mindfulness. The first is intentional attention, really paying attention on purpose, that we're not doing this passively, we're doing this actively. We're choosing to be present to what is in this moment. The second, observing without judgment. I always use for this component the example of watching a sunset. I know my husband and I and our son love being in nature. And one of the things that can be really special is sharing a sunset. And one of the reasons why I love this example for observing without judgment is because we would never sit next to each other and observe a sunset and say, ugh, you know what would have been better about this sunset? If there was a little bit less red over there and a little bit more purple. And if the pink had moved over to the right side instead of being in the middle, we wouldn't do that, because in that moment, we're so fully present and so fully accepting of what is, there's really nothing to do. There's no judgment of what's before us, nor is there something for us to change about the experience, which brings us to the fourth I mentioned, no to do, we're accepting. The third, which I skipped over, but let's go back to, is detaching from our thoughts, turning down the volume dial, the volume knob on that busy that we all listen to all day long, that internal voice, that radio. Maybe it's the voice of a parent or the voice of a boss or the voice of our child, right? That's constantly pulling our attention to places other than right now, right here. So mindfulness is on purpose, it's without judgment, it's without that volume being so loud on those thoughts, and it's without a to-do. So what does it do? What does mindfulness actually do for the body? Well, I could go on and on for about 6 lectures, but what I will tell you is it essentially helps the brain better communicate with other areas of itself. So the brain has multiple systems within it, and those systems take care of different aspects of our body. Our brain is sort of like the computer that drives the rest of us. So if I pinch somebody, the brain is activated. I understand that we conceptualize it as a pain here, but really what happens is by pinching, I activate a nerve that travels a message up to the brain, and the brain center for the arm goes boom, 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 boom. This really hurts, right? So all of the experiences are really encapsulated in the brain. And the brain has so many different systems for all the different parts of our body and all the different ways we function, like our motor cortex for moving, our linguistic areas in order to have language, our emotional areas like the amygdala that control all these big reactions and big systems, like the fight or flight system that we were talking about earlier in this lecture, that sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So, what happens with mindfulness is it tends to quiet down the systems that react with loud, loud volumes when they're stressors. And it helps the other systems of the brain communicate more effectively. So, what that really means is now we're able to turn down the siren in our body quiet enough that the other areas of the brain can thoughtfully communicate about the issue or problem or stressor that we have. How wonderful. In addition to which, it boosts the areas of the brain responsible for overall health, like your immune system. So, as a result, we're seeing this overall increase in ability to heal, inability to cope, and inability to fight off diseases. I'm not saying it's a cure for cancer, it's not. But certainly, is there research of improving outcomes with it? Yes. Is there also research on improving mental status and flexibility during it? Yes. And so, an overall life fulfillment is improved, is increased with the practice of mindfulness. I'm gonna keep going. This little diagram is one that I thought was really helpful in sort of illustrating for you some of the things I was just mentioning, that these different areas of the brain, let's see if we can see here, like this prefrontal cortex, this attention and regulation piece, that prefrontal cortex that really sits just above the eyes here and behind the forehead is responsible for attention and concentration. And if you remember, the first core component of mindfulness was all about paying attention on purpose. So, isn't that interesting? As we build up that muscle of paying attention on purpose through the use of mindfulness, we're actually fortifying that area of the brain. We're making it stronger. Did you know that you had that much control over your brain? I didn't before starting to practice mindfulness for sure. And then we can see here this frontal area, the senses, and the ability to really pull for empathy and that pro-social, pro-nature aspect of mindfulness. The emotion regulation centers that are all embedded in us all participate in our stress levels, our reactions to things. I know for myself, there have been times that because I've been so stressed out, I have yelled at my son without wanting to, or hung up a phone when I shouldn't have, or used a short tone of voice, been very curt with somebody when I really could have been more patient. Well, one thing I can tell you is with the practice of mindfulness, we can calm those systems down enough to regain ourselves sooner, make the choices that are important to us faster. I'd love to speak now about some practical practices for mindfulness. So, what are some ways that we can do this in our own backyard? What are some ways that we can do this even in our own homes? I know in our house, we have a million and one house plants of all different varieties. There are ways to facilitate this connection with mindfulness and nature, really in any place you are, whether it's without the natural world around us, like we practice today, and bringing ourselves into a mental natural world of that forest and that creek and sitting alongside it, or actually being out in nature. So, if we could pick one object in nature, like a leaf or a butterfly, and really pay attention, really try to notice the different aspects. What I say to the people that I work with when I'm doing mindfulness training is to meet that object, meet that thing anew. We may have been out in our yards a million times. We may have seen a monarch butterfly at the zoo, at the aquarium, in our own backyards, at our friends' houses. But have you really met it? Have you really observed the texture of its wings? Have you really observed the fuzziness of its nose? Maybe, maybe not. But what I will tell you is, as we pay attention, as we observe in that very specific way, we're gaining all the benefits of activating all of those areas of the brain, reducing our stress system, increasing that overall communication, and boosting our health. Listening to bird song, sitting quietly on your own patio or own deck, filtering out the sound of traffic, filtering out the sound of your neighbor's leaf blower, God forbid they use one, and really trying to filter in the bird song, to hear the different lilt of the catbird versus, let's say, the woodpecker, to be able to hear the trill of a wood thrush, to be able to really spend time in the sense of hearing, of experiencing that bird song in a way that maybe we've never experienced it before. One of the ones that I really love in nature that's really easy to do is to breathe in tandem with a natural movement of the world around you. So if you're noticing a breeze, breathe with that breeze. If you're noticing a rabbit munching, see what it feels like to also breathe at that same pace, maybe quicker. Wow, it's invigorating. That little bunny has so much energy within it. And one of my most favorites is seeing the world through a child's eyes. In mindfulness, they call it beginner's mind or traveler's mind. In my world, I call it child's eyes, because Russell sees everything for the first time, everything. Even animals he's met before, he still asks me, is that a beetle? Is that a firefly? We also call it a lightning bug, right? And yes, he is using labels in that moment, but really what he's doing is observing qualities of that animal and then noticing the label after. That's why it takes him so long to come to the name of that bug. So if we notice an animal, if we notice a plant or the pattern of growth in our backyard, as if we've never seen it before, as if we've never experienced it before, one of the things that happens is it allows our body to start to slow down. We're so fast, we're so quick, right? You want groceries? Text, put it in on Amazon. 2 hours later, it'll be at your door, right? Everything is so fast paced. Oh, another email. Oh, another Facebook message. Oh, another phone call. Oh, another text. Everything is so fast paced. And mindfulness is really about slowing down. And if you've ever had children yourself, what you'll know is agenda does not exist in a child's world. Their world is slow. It moves moment to moment and only about what is. They don't have that future orientation. They don't have that past hang up where all that suffering came from. They're here and they're now. So I would ask you, walk your own property with curiosity. See if you can notice things that you haven't noticed before, you never took the time to see before, because you always were, oh, I see the lilies. Oh, I see the peonies. Oh, I see the butterfly milkweed. Oh, I see it. Instead, really meet it. Notice it and don't judge yourself for the overgrown bush. Don't judge yourself for not having put the mulch down evenly. In that moment, while we're practicing mindfulness, allow it just to be an observation without criticism. You can notice the to-do list. It might start up that, but in that moment, try to keep it quiet, really keeping yourself to just seeing what is, just experiencing what is. And remember, please, the more the merrier. So research shows the greater the amount of time you spend practicing mindfulness, the greater the benefits and the longer lasting the results. So the more we activate these areas of the brain, the more we improve their communication with each other, the more we suppress that stress system through the practice of mindfulness in nature, the more we reap benefits and the longer those benefits last. So please, I invite you, and we'll begin our question and answer soon, to come with me on this journey of bettering our world and bettering our own overall health by practicing mindfulness in nature. Let's open it up to questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Perret, for that wonderful presentation. It was very informative and very relaxing. I have to say, I sat
I'm
here
so
and
glad.
just sipped away at my coffee, thinking, "Oh, I probably should have had tea. It would have been more in line with this." Um, so, thank you very much. So, I'm going to open it up for questions. Holly Merker said, "Hello, and thank you for this fantastic presentation and walking through the connections between mindful observation of nature and healing powers. I have co-authored a book called Ornitherapy for Your Mind, Body, and Soul, and would love to send a copy to Dr. Perea as a thank you for today's program. Absolutely, we will connect you, Holly,
Thank you, Holly.
with Dr. Perea. That would really be lovely. Thank you. I loved your comparison to how we connect with nature, and every breath that we take even is it's like everything comes full circle. I think one of the things we've seen in COVID, one of my favorite things, I have 4 kids, and I call it a COVID silver lining, was the slowing down of everything last March and April, when really nobody had a choice but to just kind of sit and be.
Mhm.
And it could, it was nice to reconnect with family. It could have, but it could also create a lot of anxiety. What do you do with all this free time now? So thank you for illustrating that circle, the closing of that circle of every time you breathe, you're taking in a bit of nature, and every time you drink some water, it all circles back to complete that circle. So, do we have any other questions from the audience? I have. I did have a question that was asked. How long is enough for mindfulness? At is 5 minutes enough? Do you have to sit for 45 minutes to really gain benefits? So, if you had to put a time on it, Dr. Perret, what would you say?
So that's such a great question. Actually, a question that happens a lot in my own mindfulness practice with patients. And what I would say is there's no amount of time too short and there's no amount of time too long. So for some people, like some of the people that I work with are very, very busy, very distracted. And what I will say is just try to work in what I call a mindful check-in. So being able to take a moment where you're taking those 3 deep breaths and just seeing if there's any tension that it lies in the body and just trying to relax that aspect and then get back into it, right? If we can do that 5 times over the course of a day, now we've built in maybe 3 minutes of mindfulness practice. Fantastic. 3 minutes over the course of a week, that's 21 minutes of mindfulness practice. Fantastic, right? Even if we're sipping our morning coffee, I'm a morning coffee person too. If we're sipping our morning coffee and we just take a few sips mindfully, we actually feel the warmth in our mouth. We feel the texture of the coffee. We feel all the flavors. We feel it as it goes down and warms our body. That small moment is significant in allowing your brain for just those moments to de-stress and come back down. And if we can build those types of things into our day with regularity, fantastic. If we have enough time to carve out 15 minutes, 20 minutes, even an hour to practice mindfulness, all the better. But what I will tell you is, and what I was hoping to really convey in the presentation is, we can do mindfulness anywhere. And we can do it any which way, as long as we're sort of abiding by the principles of it. We're paying attention on purpose. We're trying to keep the volume of our thoughts down. We're trying to bring attention without judgment. And we're trying to observe without that need to change, that to do.
Mhm.
And once we do that, we could water our plants that way. We could trim our fig trees that way. We could play with our children that way. We can even brush our teeth that way. When I'm first working with people and trying to teach them about mindfulness, the first thing I ask them to do, the first practice I give them, is try to brush your teeth mindfully. We're so good at doing it on autopilot, right? And we're walking around the house while we do it. Sometimes I leave my toothbrush in the kitchen because I'm, in the middle of everything and I'm thinking about my day and I'm thinking about this. The last place I am mentally is with that toothbrush and that toothpaste. Our body knows how to do it so fluidly without our participation that we stop participating. And so if we start to slow down and actually feel the bubbles and taste the mint and notice that, wow, we spend so much more time on the left side than the right side, we've now accomplished something mindful. Wonderful. And if we can couple that with nature, even better.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody had sent me a meme this week. I've been also trying to practice more mindfulness in my life. And it said once she stopped rushing through life, she was amazed at how much more life she had time for. And I had to say, it is one of the benefits that I'm realizing personally with meditation is that, and it's very ironic in that in slowing down,
Yes.
I'm actually more productive. It doesn't make any sense, and I have fought it for a very long time, but it is I am seeing it. So Rihanna Quinn asked, "What is the difference between meditation and mindfulness, or is mindfulness a type of meditation?"
Yes, wonderful question. So, mindfulness is a type of meditation. There are a variety of different meditations. Mindfulness meditation happens to be a particularly Buddhist practice. So, it has specific sort of qualities that have been defined over the course of time and over the course of research. So, what people have been doing, even late in many, many universities and research clinics, is sort of distilling what makes mindfulness. And that slide, a couple of slides back, maybe I could bring us to it. These are the sort of characteristics of mindfulness that have been identified in research. This intentional attention without judgment, a detaching from our thoughts, and really allowing things to be without needing to change it.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. So Holly asked, is it better to practice solo or are times when you could practice or benefit more from practicing in a group as a mindfulness?
I absolutely love that question. So, a few things about this. So, the area of the brain that's activated during mindfulness meditation is an area of the brain that's connected with what they call, research calls eudonia. And eudonia is different than other types of donia we've heard of, right? So, eudonia is about connectedness. So, people will say, Buddhist monks will say, that component of that connection makes us feel as if we have the same last name as the oak tree. That was always my favorite description of that. Could you imagine that idea that in that moment, as I'm practicing, I feel so one with the environment around me that I actually feel that a member of my family is an oak tree, right? That's how connected, that's how integrated I am. And so we have multiple benefits here. We have the benefit of practicing mindfulness meditation solo and yet still garnering this very connected, very integrated experience. Or we could practice in groups. There are meditation centers. There's even one in Huntington where you can go sit in a group, share. That's actually how I was initially trained in mindfulness, was within a group. We would sit for an hour and a half, go through an hour-long meditation, and then have half an hour of sort of processing each of our experiences. Or you could even do it very simply. I have my little guy, he's 3, and my dad says he is a budding naturalist, but a budding Zen master. And I really think what Russell is really good at is noticing things. He's really, really good at noticing things. Even little things. I changed the doormat outside of our front door. He woke up from a nap. I carried him down the stairs, and over my shoulder, he says to me, "What's that watermelon slice outside?" Right? Because I had put a watermelon slice doormat up. That little man is so good at noticing things that when he is upset, I can hold him in my lap and say, "Let's take a deep breath." And that little man will do it, right? And in that way of practicing mindfulness, and this is such a powerful tool, whether you're a teacher or a parent or a significant other or spouse to someone, or even just a friend, by practicing mindfulness and including someone else in that practice, we have the benefit of also helping them regulate their systems. And so the answer is Yes. Do it alone, do it in groups, do it with people, however it works for you. And sometimes there are times that you're going to need time alone. Things have been really stressful in your family. Things have been really stressful with your friends. And so solo mindfulness practice will feel like the right move to recenter and realign. Other times, maybe we've been feeling really lonely, especially after COVID. And there are even virtual groups of mindfulness meditation where you can sit and practice with others.
Mhm. Thank you. And thanks for clarifying the difference. I think people often confuse or get confused by what is meditation versus mindfulness. So Jonathan Michelle asked, is it better to do mindfulness inside or outside?
Great question. So it really can be done either way. What I will say is at the very beginning, the brain is just not yet trained up on how to pay attention well, right? So we struggle, Robin, just like you were saying, about slowing down and doing things one at a time in our household too, right? So I'm in private practice, but I'm also a participator in 3 other businesses, right? My husband has a full-time job and he also is a participator in 2 other businesses, right? Plus Save the Great South Bay, of course, right? So there's so much at all times going on. We're like a beehive in here, right? There's so much buzzing and moving around and jobs to be done. And sometimes it's really hard to slow down. And at the beginning of training yourself in mindfulness, you will notice the mind likes you to be busy, not because it's effective or useful or functional, but because that's what it's used to, right? It's used to the distraction of all the noise. So at the beginning, you might try to do it at a quieter time if you're going to be doing it outdoors. So right now, as a for instance, I can hear outdoors lawnmowers going, leaf blowers going, unfortunately, and I can hear some cars passing by on the bigger road by our house. And as a beginner in mindfulness practice, that might be a little too distracting to be able to really sink into the body or sink into a single experience. So you might wait to go outdoors until it's later in the day, maybe even around dusk or nighttime, where a lot of that sort of busyness of the day is quieter, and we can start to train our brains to really be able to focus on purpose in that moment. But inside, outside, either way, it's completely fine. The benefit of what we were talking about today specifically is that because nature itself has such a big impact on the body, really because the body was developed within nature, since it has such a big impact and mindfulness is such a good maximizer of those benefits, coupling those 2 things together by practicing mindfulness with a natural object or actually outside reaps even greater benefits for the individual. So, I don't know, long-winded answer, I guess, but yes, inside, outside.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Perret. Joan has a question, and I would like to tie it back. I think this was a great question that we can start to wrap up on. How do we bring this back to bay-friendly yards? And before I ask the question, I'd love to share a personal experience I had when I started to create a bay-friendly yard in my own yard. And my husband laughed. He had his perfectly green turf lawn. With all the ornamental plants that we had picked out 10 years ago when we moved in, and my experiences and learning with Save the Great South Bay, I came to notice that my yard was really devoid of nature. I mean, I had some pretty plants out there and my lawn was super bright green, but there were no bugs, there were no bees, there were no birds hanging around my yard. And so in working with the Bay Friendly Yards program, I converted just a small section of my yard to a pollinator patch, to a butterfly garden. And I tell you, those plants weren't even out of my truck before the bees were there. And my husband laughed because I'm not very domestic. He laughed as I was planting them. He had a really good chuckle. But then it wasn't long before I found him sitting with his lawn chair out on the front lawn, watching the nature show that surrounded these 4 very simple plants. And I'm going to have to call Frank in on this one to help answer. I hope he's on the call with us still.
I'm here.
Great. I know I was 4 very simple plants. And Joan's question was, thank you for this presentation. What are the best plants to invite beauty into our yard? And Joan, I want to start this by saying it's not just about inviting beauty into our yard, it's about inviting nature back into our yards. And that's what the Bay Friendly Yard program is really all about. It's, you can choose equally beautiful plants, but in making those choices, let's choose plants that also invite not just the beauty, but also the bees, the butterflies, the bugs that come along with that. So Frank, could you elaborate on the answer to that question? What are the best plants to invite beauty into our yard?
Yeah, yeah. From my perspective, nothing does it like a tree. So oaks, beeches, they physically alter the land and create shade. They create lots of beauty in my mind. So I would say oaks or beeches. If you don't feel like you have a lot of room, there are a lot of beautiful native perennial plants. And if you look at our Bay Friendly Yard, our e-store, there's a whole list of them there that are very versatile. So that I would suggest that.
I also want to mention, just from the wife of somebody who has populated our yard with native plants, behind Frank, I don't know if everyone can see the wall behind him, but coral honeysuckle stays green throughout the winter, and it climbs nicely up a trellis or along the ground, and hummingbirds love it. The bees love it. We found ladybugs, ants. We found so many things that are so interested in that. And it has these beautiful sort of thin reddish orange flowers. It's just stunning to me. And the butterfly milkweed has also been really interesting. So last year we planted a strip of butterfly milkweed, and just like you, Robin, before even getting them in the ground, all the bugs were interested and bunnies were interested, and we planted them out front of our house. And I would say we probably had 200, 300 caterpillars on those plants last summer, and even had a little jade green chrysalis with gold and black, as if someone had painted it by hand, dangling right outside our front door, that turned into a monarch. And my son and us and my mother and our neighbors would all monitor this little chrysalis, because we were all so interested and dumbfounded at how nature could create something so beautiful and so perfect. I'll actually send you the photo, Robin, if you want to use it at some point. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
But butterfly milkweed and coral honeysuckle, to me, were really powerfully visually impacting, and also as far as the animals were also really impacting for habitat.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to give a shout out to the Lindenhurst Library, because they took advantage of our Bay Friendly Yard butterfly. So the pollinator packs that we, it's a little plug for our Bay Friendly Yards program. We offer the butterfly garden packages, and the Lindenhurst Library planted them. So Sarah, if you want to unmute yourself, you're more than welcome to, and tell us about your experience at the Lindenhurst Library since you planted your native pollinator garden there. Holly said yes to oaks. Doug Talamay's latest book, called The Nature of Oaks, explains so much why planting native oaks are huge magnets for animals and plants. We love Doug Talamay, and we love his book. Highly recommended it. Can recommend it. It's Nature's Best Hope. When I started it, I was like, ugh, this is going to be one of those science nerdy books. It was such a great and easy read, and it so easily explained how all of the nature is connected, and how planting the right plants starts to rebuild habitat that can help save our monarch butterflies and our decimated bird populations. Jonathan and Michelle asked, what is the best tree for the world? And I think even I can answer that at this point. I'm going to say I can't say for the world, because every area is different, but Frank, correct me if I'm wrong in saying oak trees would be our, oak trees are home to over 400 types of butterflies, making them, for me, a nature superhero for a tree.
Yeah, I think that's right. And if you put a beech next to an oak, they both get big, but they layer beautifully together, and we'll be happy, very happy together. So it creates some zen in your garden.
Yeah, I put two links in the chat bar, and I just want to say them out loud for anybody who watches this later on. The Native Plant Finder on the National Wildlife Federation is a great resource for identifying native plants and which plants are the hostess with the mostest, as we call them. So if you're going to plant something that plays host to the most amount of other species. And of course, SaveTheGreatSouthBay.org, Bay Friendly Yards section. There's a list of resources there on native plants, invasives, where you can get support in building your own Bay Friendly yard. So Sarah said she can't unmute. Hold on, Sarah, let me see if I can. There you go, Sarah. How about now?
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
So thanks, Sarah. We're just about ready to wrap up, but we'd love to hear Lindenhurst Memorial Library's your experience with the Bay Friendly Bundle, the Butterfly Pack.
You know, the plants are doing wonderfully. And every time I walk into my office, I monitor them, and I can see the bees outside my window, and we're very excited about being able to, we love being the first library with the Bay Friendly, yard, and we're going to keep it up. And just, I'm so happy working with you guys. It's the best. The patches of flowers are starting, and we're looking forward to it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love all the programs with you guys. So
thank you. Thank you. We're so happy to bring them, and we're grateful for the library's collaboration.
yeah.
So with that, it's 11 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of everybody's Saturdays. I hope you had a few minutes to relax your minds and let go of your to-do list while we enjoyed Dr. Perret's presentation today. Thank you again, Dr. Perret, for joining us today. Thank you to Frank Piccinini, our Director of Habitat Restoration, for helping us put together these wonderful Bay Friendly Yards programs. We will be taking a break over July and August, but we'll be back in September with another Bay Friendly Yard webinar. We hope to see you then.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.